All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're decoding the mind of a 13th century mystic to uncover some incredibly universal human anxieties about identity, belief, and where we belong. It's basically a psychological mystery set right in the middle of the Middle Ages. But as you'll see, the inner conflicts we're about to explore are surprisingly identical to how we build our own identities today.
Picture this. We're starting right in the middle of a seriously bizarre crisis. The guy we're looking at was relentlessly tormented by inner demons. He explicitly wrote about being haunted by them. And no, we aren't talking about Hollywood-style exorcisms here. This deeply personal, truly terrifying experience is going to become our key clue to solving this psychological mystery. So, what exactly were these demons? And where on earth did they come from? Section 1. The Tormented Mystic. Meet Abraham Abulafia. So, to actually understand these demons, we've got to understand the man fighting them. Abraham Abulafia's life was, well, pretty wild. Born in Aragon in 1240, he traveled all over the place, seeking what he called the divine active intellect. Fast forward to 1270, and his intense visionary encounters tick off, and right along with them, the demonic torment. He even developed these messianic beliefs about himself, which ultimately led him on a wildly brazen mission to Rome in 1280. He literally went to seek an audience with the Pope, which, unsurprisingly, landed him straight in prison. After he got out, he kept up his mystical writings in Sicily until he just mysteriously vanished from the historical record around 1291. But out of all that chaos, there's one number that really stands out. 15. For 15 agonizing years, starting in 1270, his ecstatic encounters with the divine left him completely haunted by what he called vengeful demons. So we have to ask, what were these demons trying to tell him? Section 2. Threat of the Other, Defining Alterity. To really figure out what was going on with him, we have to look at what terrified the medieval world the most, people who were different. You know, identity isn't just about who you are, it's actually about who you exclude. Anthropologists and philosophers call this concept alterity. It's simply the state of being other. In medieval society, religious groups built their identities by drawing very strict, but honestly very fragile boundaries between the in-group and the out-group. You are who you are strictly because you aren't them.
And there's this fantastic story from the source text that totally nails this anxiety. It brings up a much older, foundational rabbinic story about a highly respected figure named Rabbi Eliezer. He ends up in massive trouble, investigated by the authorities, all because he found pleasure in a single teaching from a Christian sectarian. The story just proves how insanely fragile the group boundary really was. Even the slightest passing attraction to an outsider's idea was seen as a massive threat to the entire community's identity.
Right, so if these boundaries are just things we make up, we're left with a pretty uncomfortable question. What happens when that forbidden other actually sneaks past the cultural gates and gets right into your own head? What happens when you realize you're drawn to the exact things you're supposed to reject? Section 3. Uneasy Conviviality. 13th Century Society. We usually picture medieval religious groups just hating each other from behind giant stone walls, right? Well, reality on the ground was a stunning twist. 13th century Mediterranean society was incredibly intertwined. It kind of shatters all our modern assumptions about the Middle Ages. Jews, Christians, and Muslims were sharing neighborhoods. They were drinking and gambling together, they had business partnerships, and they'd even watch each other's religious processions. They were living side by side in this vibrant, genuinely pluralistic culture. And naturally, with all that closeness came an intimacy that absolutely terrified the authorities. Just look at this formal charge from Charles II of Naples in 1289, literally accusing Jews of the seduction of Christian maidens. The real threat to identity back then wasn't just physical violence or arguing over theology. It was the alluring, strictly forbidden sexual and social attraction to your neighbor. The boundaries were blurring big time.
Section 4. Diagnosing the Demons, a Psychoanalytic View.
Okay, so with that intense social backdrop in mind, we can finally put Abulafia's demons on the psychoanalytic couch. The source text uses these fascinating frameworks from Sigmund Freud and philosopher Paul Ricoeur to decode this whole thing. Ricoeur talks about the eschatology of consciousness, basically arguing that when our subconscious erupts, it brings up these ancient foundational symbols. If we apply that to our mystic here, we can see that Abulafia's internal demons weren't literal supernatural monsters. They were actually manifestations of his own subconscious, just bubbling violently up to the surface. The text actually maps this out using a classic edible dynamic. Step 1. Abulafia had this intense, forbidden intellectual and spiritual attraction to Christian ideas. He was profoundly drawn to the other. Step 2. In the psychoanalytic model, forbidden desire triggers an intense fear of punishment, specifically the fear of castration. For Abulafia, this meant a sheer terror of divine retribution for his idolatrous curiosities. Step 3. His mind just couldn't handle the conflict, so it projected all this overwhelming anxiety outward as vengeful demons. The demons were literally his own guilt and fear of punishment attacking him.
Section 5. Refutation and absorption. Abulafia's ultimate cure.
And that brings us to the climax of this psychological mystery, how he actually tried to cure himself. To fight off this forbidden attraction to the Christian world, he violently split the universe into two totally irreconcilable halves. On one side, he aligned Jacob, representing Israel, with pure intellect, spiritual form, and heavenly matters. On the flip side, he aligned Esau, representing Christendom, with base matter, demonic idolatry, and raw carnality. He was desperately trying to prove his own purity by drawing the hardest, thickest line possible. He went on the offensive, launching these furious, really graphic polemics. He wrote that Esau goes forth by means of the blood. He compared Christendom to bloody, demonic beasts, driven completely by bodily impurity, violence, and base instincts. This was just an incredibly aggressive defense mechanism. But here is the ultimate twist of this whole explainer. On the surface, you've got his furious anti-Christian rants. But underneath? The source text shows that Abulafia was simultaneously engaging in a deep, secret absorption of Christian doctrines. He was quietly weaving Trinitarian logic and Jesus motifs right into his own mystical systems. His aggressive refutation of the other was actually a desperate cover to hide the fact that he was deeply absorbing the exact ideas he claimed to hate. Which loops us right back to Ricoeur's eschatology of consciousness, a mental apocalypse. You see, his real mystical goal, the way he actually cured those demons, wasn't by defeating some outside monster. It was about integrating that forbidden other right inside himself. By secretly absorbing those foreign concepts into his own theology, he shattered the illusory division between self and other and finally achieved a state of complete psychological unification. The demons vanished the moment he finally embraced the fractured parts of his own mind. And that leaves us with a really fascinating, maybe even slightly uncomfortable reflection on our own minds. We spend so much energy defining ourselves by what we aren't, by the people and ideas we try to exclude. But as Abulafia's 15-year battle with his inner demons proves, the boundaries we draw around ourselves are usually hiding the exact things we're most drawn to. So I'll leave you with this to chew on. If our identities are built on who we exclude, who is the other living inside you? Think about it. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning those boundaries.